Some of the biggest banks on Earth looked at ChatGPT, saw exactly how powerful it was, and then blocked their own staff from using it at work. They were not being paranoid. They were being correct. Because there is one quiet question that decides whether a bank is even allowed to touch a GenAI tool. And almost nobody asks it out loud. So let me break this down from first principles, because it is far simpler than the jargon makes it sound. Using any GenAI tool comes down to one thing. Your words get sent to a computer that runs the model, and it answers back. So the only question that really matters is the boring one. Now follow the logic one step. If the model runs on the provider's computer, then to get an answer, your words and any file you attach have to travel over the internet to them. For a holiday request, fine. For a client's account, a credit file, or source code, that is a data export, and a brand new path for sensitive information to leave the building. The capability is real. But that one fact, the data leaves, is where most bank AI pilots quietly die. Remember those banks from the start? Here is what actually happened. In early 2023, when ChatGPT went mainstream, several of the largest banks on Earth restricted their own staff from using it at work. JP Morgan, Goldman, Citi, Deutsche Bank, and others, all the same move, all for the same reason. They could not control where the typed-in data went. They were not anti-AI. They just followed the first principle and did not like where it led. The obvious patch is to keep the data on their computer, but in an EU region, so it never leaves Europe. For many workloads, that genuinely solves it. But for the most sensitive material, defense work, classified data, certain regulated records, teams may decide that even an EU region of a foreign-owned cloud is too much, because of who ultimately holds legal jurisdiction over that provider. This is exactly why digital sovereignty became an EU policy theme, with efforts like Gaia-X. When that is your bar, their computer is off the table entirely. Run the principle to its end. If it cannot be their computer, it has to be yours. And a few years ago, that was a dead end, because running it yourself meant settling for a weak model. Not anymore. There is now a deep bench of open-weight models, families like Llama, Mistral, Qwen, and DeepSeek, whose weights you can download and run on your own hardware. One honest caveat. Open weight is not the same as fully open source. The licenses vary, so read them. But the gap to the big hosted models has closed enough that running your own is no longer a compromise you apologize for. And that is the whole trick. Sovereign, or on-premise, GenAI just means the model runs on infrastructure you control, inside your own network, so the prompts and documents are processed right there and never shipped to an outside API. Be precise about what that buys you. It removes one specific risk, the data leaving to a third party. It does not magically make you secure. Your access controls, your logging, your network still matter. But it shuts the exact door compliance was most worried about. Once the model is inside your walls, you point it at your own documents, your policies, your manuals, and it answers from those. The technique has a name, retrieval augmented generation. But the only part that matters for a regulated team is this rule. Every answer must show the exact source passage it came from. Because you, the bank, get audited too. An answer you cannot trace back to a document is not evidence. It is a guess with good grammar. Now the part the vendor slides skip. Sovereignty is not free. Standing up a platform like this is a real project. Think weeks to a few months, not an afternoon install. So the decision rule, straight from first principles, is simple. If your data could safely sit on someone else's computer, you may not need any of this. The on-prem route earns its cost precisely when the data genuinely cannot leave. Match the effort to the sensitivity, nothing more. So here is the whole thing in one line. The old instinct was to send your data to the AI. The first principle flips it. When the data legally cannot leave, you bring the model to the data instead. Open weight models made that realistic. Traceable sources make it trustworthy, and matching the effort to the sensitivity keeps it sane. That is how a regulated team gets to use this technology without betting the bank on it. If breaking it down from first principles made this click, follow along, because I take one banking and AI topic and do exactly this, one at a time. I also put together a short checklist of the questions to ask before you let any GenAI tool near regulated data, and it is free in the newsletter linked below.